Chair Benham, as you know, multiple DCMs currently list futures contracts with an underlying digital asset, all of which have been listed through the self-certification process without CFTC intervention, so the underlying digital asset clearly didn't cause an issue. Despite that, some think CFTC is too weak and ineffective to handle spot digital commodity self-certification. Are they right? Is the CFTC not equipped? Are they not capable to handle spot digital commodity self-certification?
Senator, thanks for the question. I'm going to say we are certainly equipped and we are certainly capable. I would just reiterate what I've said multiple times to your colleagues. If this committee acts and provides additional authority to regulate these markets, we would certainly need additional funding to do it. But otherwise, from a policy and expertise perspective, we are as well positioned as anyone.
Good. Very good. Thank you. And certainly that makes sense that you need the resources to, if you are moving in that direction. Some have suggested the SEC should first determine whether something is a security, and then CFTC should follow up with its own determination. If the two disagree, the CFTC could sue the SEC. A similar process exists for novel derivatives products, but many in the industry would tell us it's an unworkable process that has largely killed those markets. I'm afraid such a framework would also stifle crypto markets, which is a terrible outcome. As you well know, this committee doesn't have jurisdiction over SEC. So should Congress put the CFTC in the losing position of having to sue the SEC every time they disagree?
Senator, short answer to that question is that would be, obviously a very difficult position, and one, practically speaking, that is unlikely. The self-certification process, as you point out, it's a well-worn process. It's about 24 years old right now, and I did some work myself, when I was a commissioner, looking at listing of products prior to the self-certification authority and after the self-certification authority, and the numbers are actually quite staggering, to use that word again, in terms of listed products. It's an efficient system. It's one that actually forces both the market participant, the exchange, and the regulator to be involved. So it's not just driven by the market participant. We do engage. It's checking boxes, it's making sure they're complying with our rules and our regulations. But it is an efficient system, and I think that should be a model as you consider legislation to use for digital assets as well.
Good. Thank you. To my knowledge, Congress has never held a hearing solely on decentralized finance, not once. Yet some would want to regulate it in such a way to make it very difficult for the industry. The IRS just excluded DeFi from their new broker rule, and the EU is punted. The rest of the world realizes the issue needs more studying. Instead of having CFTC spend resources on something the agency has no expertise in, shouldn't we focus on regulating centralized exchanges?
Yeah, I think at this point, Senator, given what we've observed, what I have observed over the course of 7 years, the priority should be centralized exchanges. We've brought a few enforcement cases around DeFi. We've engaged with market participants, seen this area evolve, certainly, but I think the larger challenge right now as it relates to customer protections, fraud, manipulation is around these centralized exchanges. So if I were to make a recommendation is to focus on that particular area right now, because that gap is the one that is really the one that's most concerning to me. DeFi is more challenging. We've heard our fair share of complaints from the industry, but I am a firm believer that there is a regulatory nexus for DeFi, but perhaps we have to take a unique look at it given the unique nature of DeFi. So it may not be exactly what we do with traditional centralized exchanges, but the notion or idea that it should live in a regulatory vacuum, I disagree with that. But all that to be said is, I think it demands more thought, consideration, and discussion between both the regulator and this committee before any further steps are taken.
Good, thank you. Congress was clear that the CFTC's jurisdiction to regulate swaps outside the U.S. is limited to those that have direct and significant connection with the U.S. That boundary is important because unfettered regulatory overreach can lead to foreign retaliation, which hurts U.S. market participants and users. you've expressed today, and rightfully so, the CFT's limited resources. So why should it be the world's crypto police?
Senator, we should certainly not be the world's crypto police. I think I mentioned to Senator Gillibrand, I believe that I serve as vice chair of IOSCO. I put it in my statement as well. And I've seen multiple jurisdictions across the globe, Asia, Middle East, Europe, UK, South America, in the course of 3 years as vice chair, go from pilot programs to well-built regulatory systems. So from an enforcement, customer protection side, this delta between the U.S. and the rest of the world is not healthy. And I think from your perspective, as we think about innovation and economic development, it should be concerning that we're so far behind. I think we have the benefit of being the largest market in the world, and we don't necessarily have to move first, but we do have to move, and I think this is a good step forward. In terms of our nexus with non-U.S. participants and how far our reach should go, you raise a very important point, and one that this committee thought about very deeply just 10 or 15 years ago with the swaps market and this nexus, the significant, the nexus test, which is in our statute. It's challenging, but ultimately I think at its root, what we have to focus on is how are, if at all, U.S. customers impacted or affected? And if they are affected, then I think there is a clear nexus between what an entity, individual, organization is offering to a U.S. Customer, regardless of their location, whether it's in the U.S. or obviously, to the point of your question, outside of the U.S. So we have to think about it. I think our consistent baseline or foundation should be that nexus with U.S. customers and whether or not they're being offered products and ultimately defrauded or manipulated. But if we can find that nexus, and it's not necessarily always black and white, there's some areas that are gray of where affiliates or subsidiaries are set, but we've done a good job, I think, by and large, over the past 10 years implementing Dodd-Frank and Title VII. We've done this in other markets over the course of decades, and I feel pretty strongly we could do the same in this particular market.
Good. Well, again, thank you very much for being here. We appreciate your leadership. You've got a lot of responsibility, and again, we just appreciate you stepping up to the plate and providing the leadership that's needed.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you so much. I'm going to do one follow-up question because Senator Boozman raised a really important issue that we are struggling with here with SEC and CFTC.